Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. My thoughts on this film after recently seeing it. I'll start by saying that if I was to rank the last few superhero movies that I've watched, from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, The Flash, Blue Beetle, and The Marvels, none of them were amazing or anything. The Marvels was the worst, so I would put that film on the bottom of the list. Guardians 3, I think I would put that to the top. It was the best of this subpar group of movies. I could switch around the order of the three in the middle. They're all about the same in terms of quality. But where would Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom fit in on this list? Well, I suppose the good news is I would probably put it in second place, actually. Yeah, there was some decent enough stuff in there, some themes of fatherhood and family, but it's very stock standard, generic, modern superhero movie stuff once again, with the same assembly line feel to it. Main bad guy wants revenge, the laziest and most common and overused supervillain motivation of them all. And as I watched the film, I couldn't help but notice that, like the films I mentioned in this list, The Marvels, Guardians 3, Blue Beetle, Ant-Man 3, The Flash, the tone of all these kinds of films is now exactly the same. Primarily light, frothy, campy, and comedic, with occasional moments of mild pathos. Breathless CGI-based action sequences interspersed with plenty of clunky exposition and cheap jokes and irony. It all just descends into farce because nothing is taken seriously, which is something I've mentioned many times now about these kinds of movies. There's usually an attempt in these movies at some form of emotional sentimentality, which is supposed to be the bedrock of the character's journey. But it's all a bit schmaltzy, just enough to maybe tug slightly on the heartstrings so that you get this perfectly calibrated lump in the throat, but not enough to turn you into a blubbering mess. It all feels so artificially engineered and designed. When did superhero movies become like this? I mean, look at where DC was 10 to 15 years ago. So you had the likes of the Batman Begins trilogy, The Dark Knight, The Dark Knight Rises, and then you had the Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman. These were serious movies, serious tone. They were actual, serious attempts at creative theatrical cinema. They weren't childish comedies like what we get now. Marvel movies were always a bit lighter and more colourful in tone when compared to DC, but you still had the likes of the three Captain America movies, which were relatively serious films by comparison to the rest of the MCU at least. And Avengers Infinity War has some very serious moments, and it ends on a majorly dark and hardcore cliffhanger. What has happened to superhero films of late? Why is DC trying to emulate Marvel's tone? Now, the opening 5 minutes of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom are actually decent enough. Main character Arthur Curry delivers a solid opening monologue, voiceover, explaining his world and life. The universe is set up, the characters are explained, but the film continuously hits you with the environmental message over and over, and it's about as subtle as a tsunami. Skipping to the end of the film, he even addresses the United Nations in a speech to the world that has a very global crisis requires global solutions kind of vibe. Anyway, as if to seal the character's fate as Thor of the Sea, Aquaman has to break his half-brother, or Marius, out of a prison and enlist his help to fight the big bad, basically. And their relationship is fraught with antagonism and distrust. All sounds very like Thor and Loki. And at one point, Arthur even jokingly refers to Orm as Loki. He calls him Loki. The Atlantis Council that Arthur has to deal with, they're reluctant to make their presence known to the humans on the surface above. They want to remain in secret, but Arthur wants to finally go public and take a seat at the table with the international community. So it all feels very familiar to Wakanda from the MCU. The primary villain, David Kane / Black Manta, is basically taken over by the incorporeal essence of Kordax, a character who feels like a rip-off of Sauron, except he's frozen in the ice. A person can be taken over by Kordax by holding the ring. I mean the Black Trident. Again, if you told me an AI wrote the story by extrapolating and approximating other, better action-adventure movies, I would not be surprised. Now, the opening 20 minutes or so aren't bad at all. The film doesn't do too much wrong by that point. But again, what exactly am I comparing it to? Certainly, there's still nothing to write home about here. But when Arthur has to go off and free his half-brother from prison, the film begins to quickly stall. Between the prison break action scenes and a pointless scene in the middle where they go to see some all CGI character, a crime boss called Kingfish, and then there's another action scene. It feels like these set pieces were inserted into the movie to slow the plot down a bit and extend the runtime. There's a bit of padding going on here and there. And then there's a scene on an island where insects and animals are becoming giant for some reason, and I know there's an explanation for this, but the plot is moving so fast and you're just being bamboozled with so much rapid-fire plot points and arbitrary action sequences and special effects, you would be forgiven for losing track for a moment as to why such things were even occurring in the story. As you can see, I'm not doing an extremely thorough plot breakdown. There's not an awful lot to really talk about here. The film is just so utterly average in every department, I can neither strongly berate it or praise it. Ultimately, Aquaman and The Lost Kingdom feels to me much like so many big franchise films these days, and just like the other films I listed earlier, which were also released in 2023, they all feel like content. 2 hours of generic, safe, predictable, derivative, CGI-heavy superhero movie content to be churned out as part of a studio's ongoing cinema content schedule. So should you go and see Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom? No, it's not worth seeing in the cinema. Is it worth watching? If there was nothing else on television some evening, and it just happened to be on, maybe watch the first 20 minutes or something. Other than that, it's a pretty skippable movie. Thank you very much for watching this one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please subscribe for more, hit that like button, share this video, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye. The Dave Cullen Show is made possible by you, my generous subscribers. If you'd like to support my work, head on over to my Subscribe Star, linked below in the description box, and for a pledge of as little as $1 per month, you can help to keep the show going. I'm also doing one-to-one monthly subscriber chats. Thanks again. Take care.